Hello everyone, Tina here for Pretty Pink Posh. I hope you're having a fabulous day. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, today we're going to shake things up a bit. We are going to be using the butterfly shaker card to create a project. I love the size of this butterfly, and we're going to use this to create a springtime smile card where we'll be using the smile script die as well. Both of these are part of the latest release at Pretty Pink Posh, and I hope you guys have had a chance to check it out because it's pretty fabulous and perfect for springtime. So let's jump in and do some die cutting first. We are going to start by die cutting our butterfly shaker. We're going to die cut this out twice with white cardstock, and then while we're at it, I'm going to take my smile die. This is going to be for my sentiment. I'm going to be taking some gray cardstock, and this is double-sided adhesive sheets. I'm going to remove one side of the release paper off of it, and then I want to put this on my gray cardstock. This way, when I die cut out my smile, I have adhesive on the back, and it's just going to make it easier to adhere. So I'm going to run this to my die cut machine and die cut out 2 butterflies. Okay, I die cut out 2 of my butterflies, and you can see the lovely stitch detail in there. I just think stitch detail is so nice. And then when I did die cut out the words my smile script die, I left the adhesive backing on here, just for now, especially because I don't want to lose the dot on my eye. So we're going to leave that there until we finish up our project. Now I also took a piece of acetate, you can see here. I put my butterfly behind a piece of acetate and then trimmed around it with my scissors, kind of fussy cutting around it. Very easy to do. Another option is, if you don't have acetate, you could use your packaging. I think packaging works really well. It is not as thick, of course, but that's an option to create this project. So I'm going to set these aside. We're going to create our shaker in a minute, but I do want to create a background for my card. So I have a piece of white cardstock. This measures, let's see, 3 1/4 inches wide by 4 1/2 inches long. And then I picked out some spring colored cardstock. This is great for using your scraps up too, guys. And this would be nice if you wanted to go through your pattern papers and find a tone-on-tone orange, just some nice spring colors. What we're going to do is fill in the background of this panel with the colored cardstock. And I'm going to do that using my tape runner. And I'm going to start with my pink here. And we're going to put pink on the bottom. These are 3/4 inch strips. Next I'll take my orange. I think that's going to go pretty next to the pink. Now you could do this two ways. You could actually add adhesive to your panel and just lay these on top like this. In fact, that's what we'll do to make this process go a little quicker. And again, you could use pattern papers. I think that would be really pretty. But we're just going to line this along the edge. So we just have to basically trim one side. I'm going to add my teal and my orange. And I'm going to grab a purple. I was missing one, so we're going to trim down a 3/4 inch strip of purple cardstock. And you could really use any color theme that you'd like. If you wanted to do start off with like a light blue and fade to a dark, I think that would be really nice also. And then we'll go ahead and adhere this to the very top, and that will completely fill in our panel. You can see here. This side's pretty straight edge. I am going to use my scissors and just, actually I'll use my paper trimmer, and we'll just trim off the excess here. I like to make the strips longer than the background. This way, I know for sure it's going to fit my panel. Now I wanted to create an impression in the background, and to do that, I don't know if you guys have ever embossed with your stencils, but it's pretty easy to do. It's not as intense as regular embossing, but it does leave an impression. Now, I had pixie spray behind this stencil, and I removed it just using alcohol. Alcohol removes your pixie spray really easy. I actually have this one that I removed the alcohol with, but the pixie spray. That way, you don't want to run this, emboss your panels with pixie spray on the back, only because your paper will lift up. So I have a card front panel. This is a standard A2 panel, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I'm going to just line this up here. Actually, I'm going to bring, let's bring the die cutting machine to you guys so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I have my platform. To do this, it's super easy. I'm going to start by taking my embossing mat, and then I'm going to take my panel, put this on top of my embossing mat, and I'm just going to make sure it's straight since it is a card front panel. I don't want it crooked. And then you take your, you're going to use whatever embossing sandwich is preferred for your die cutting machine. I happen to have the Platinum 6, and so this is the sandwich that's required for embossing. Now I'm going to go forward and back, and then we can see the results. Lovely embossed pattern. And you can see that lattice shaped. You can see the reverse side too here. Pretty neat, huh? And now again, it's not as intense as a regular embossing folder, but it does emboss, which is really nice. I like it so much that I'm going to take this background panel that we created, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take my stencil. Now you can do this with any stencil. The one that I am using is called the lattice stencil, and we are just going to make sure it's nice and even. And then I'm going to add my embossing plate and just run this through. I'm going to run it back again for good measure. And then you can see maybe a little bit better on this one, the embossing. So use your stencils to emboss. It's a nice way to add a little bit of texture in your backgrounds. So our embossing is done. Now what we're going to do is take our panel and put this on our card base. And I kind of like it to where that lattice is raised. So we're going to flip it around and add adhesive behind our white panel. And then this is going to go directly on our A2 size card base. Lovely. I think I have a little bit overhanging, so I'm just going to trim that off, and I'm going to use my paper trimmer for that. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our background that we created with our colored cardstock, and I'm going to take my butterfly, one of my butterflies here. I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to add a lot of adhesive behind it. I don't want it to lift up. And then I'm going to place this kind of at an angle on my panel. I think that's the perfect spot for it. And that white just makes it stand out against that colorful background. Now once we have this adhered, I'm going to take this and flip this around, and we're going to add adhesive behind this panel. And I'm going to place this in the center of my card base. And that's ready to go. Okay, now we have our acetate. I'm going to flip this over and add adhesive behind my acetate piece. And then this is going to go over the top of the acetate, and we'll just tack that down. And then we'll flip this around, and then we're going to add some thin strips of foam adhesive behind our butterfly. Now I'm going to go in two different sections. I'm going to go to the left of the wings and to the right of the wings. If you want your sequins to flow all through your butterfly, then you would just go around the edges, but I'm going to make it in two different sections. This way I can make it fuller. And I'm just going to use some very thin strips again of some foam adhesive. So let's go around the wings. Okay, now that I have my foam adhesive behind my butterfly, you can see here. Now if you wanted to double up with your foam adhesive to make your shaker card really shake, you could, but I'm not too worried about that because I like it to kind of stay stationary. Now to fill my shaker, there's a lot of beautiful flat back pearls in the Pretty Pink Posh shop, but I'm going to be using the sparkling clear sequin mix, kind of keeping it shiny in there. And I'm going to just spoon some of these sequins in the body of the butterfly over here. Okay, I have quite a few in there. I'm going to leave my butterfly white, but I'm going to take my top layer that has the acetate and press it down against the bottom layer, just making sure that they're lined up. And we have a little bit of movement in there, but I love the bright colors with that neutral butterfly here. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our smile. What we did with that adhesive back paper was just basically create a sticker with our sentiment. And you can see it's a little bit on the intricate side. So, once we have our smile, I'm going to place that, for the most part, over the body of my butterfly. There's a little bit overhanging. Okay, I think my smile kind of gets a little bit lost with that white. I think it's just a little bit too gray. So I'm going to keep that there, but I'm going to do the same thing that we did with the gray cardstock with black cardstock. This way, I think it'll stand out a little bit better. I'm just going to trim around it here. And I'll run this through my die cutting machine. Remove our smile here, and then we will remove the negative pieces. And rather than removing my gray, what we're going to do is just go ahead and layer it right on top. And this is just going to add a little bit of dimension to our sentiment. And I think that stands out a lot better. What do you think? Okay, we have our eye. Okay, I lost my eye. It went flying somewhere. No worries, I have a solution for that. Bear with me. Now, before we call this card done, I do want to do one more thing. I want to take some black cardstock, and I'm going to take a sentiment from the Simple Sentiment stamp set. I chose the one that says A Note of Thanks. And I'm going to stamp that on some black cardstock, and we are going to block it off here. I'm going to treat my paper with my anti-static powder. I'll go over my sentiment with my Versamark ink pad, and then we will stamp that, A Note of Thanks. And then I'm going to go over this with white embossing powder. And then I'll go ahead and melt this with my heat gun. Okay, I blocked it off. And now what we're going to do is just place this over our butterfly here. And then, last but not least, I'm going to take a couple extra sequins, and we're going to add a couple in some open areas here. I'm going to add, lovely. Okay, we'll just put these back. And again, these are the sparkling clear sequins. I'm going to take some Nouveau Crystal drops. This is Ebony Black. And I'm going to take this and just dot it right on the acetate. This is a great way to dot eyes without having to fussy with gluing them down. But especially on acetate too. When you want to glue them on acetate, sometimes that glue will be able to see it. But that is my project today for Pretty Pink Posh. I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you so much for joining me. Have a lovely rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.